what kind of car I drive, how many points I put up, how many win totals I have as a coach was going to be the thing that identifies me. But it was God through my whole hockey career and coaching career that has been telling me, no, your identity is in me, not in how many wins or losses you have. It's not in how much money you make or don't make. Not that those things are unimportant, but that's not where your identity lies.
Hello and welcome to season 2 of the Dear Young Athlete podcast, where we talk to athletes and coaches about their journeys and what advice they would have for a younger version of themselves. I'm your host, Jacob Thompson. You can call me JT. If you want to hear my story and why I do this podcast, that will be in season 1, episode 1. But enough about me. Let's meet our guest. Today, I am joined by a very special guest. The man joining me today, he is a husband. He is a father. He is a former Division I and professional hockey player who also played in the Frozen Four. He's now a collegiate head coach and has even won an award for FCA Coach of the Year, which we'll get into. Above all that, he is a man of God, and I'm so excited to hear his story, and I know what he shares will bless us. So, without further ado, Chris McKelvie. Chris, what's happening?
Not too much. How you doing?
I'm doing well. One more day. So
thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to hang out with you here, and hopefully we're a huge encouragement to some athletes out there and other people too.
Definitely. Well, with that said, let's get into it. So, Chris, you played professional hockey. But where did it all begin for you, and how did you fall in love with sports?
Yeah, man, I could probably go on for a really long time on my love for specifically hockey and soccer, just sports. But I actually grew up in Minnesota. I'm at Bethel now, and I grew up about 5 minutes away from Bethel. That's not why I came back. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later, but grew up here in New Brighton, Moundsview area, just outside of Minneapolis for anybody not listening in Minnesota. And I had two brothers. I have a twin brother and an older brother, and they were both heavily involved in sports. And I think when you're around people that are in sports and they're your best friends, then you probably are just going to play sports too. My dad was a college hockey player at St. Scholastica back in the 70s, and they won some national championships. And he grew up in Canada, so hockey was kind of in his blood. And then my mom is from northern Minnesota too, and she didn't play hockey. They didn't really have girls hockey back then, but in northern Minnesota, hockey is king, especially back in the 70s and 80s. So by kind of nature of who my parents were, hockey was seemingly the natural progression. But the funny thing is, I actually didn't want to play hockey until I was really in third grade. I played it, in kindergarten, first and second grade, but I had no appetite for it, no interest in it. I really wanted to play basketball. I think there was a part of me that just wanted to be different than my twin brother. As a twin, you kind of get paired. People think you're inseparable. And with my twin and I, even though we're best friends, we definitely have two. We are not twins that need to live in the same cul-de-sac or anything like that. We like having our own path. And so really kind of in third, fourth grade is really when I started to say, okay, this hockey thing is kind of cool. My dad's really into it. My brothers are really into it. So I think, that's probably a better path than going, with basketball. In some of the traditional sports, I had played a little bit of t-ball and baseball and had no interest in that. So I picked hockey and soccer and a little bit of track, and then it kind of just went from there. I didn't, just grew up in a really competitive household with brothers. We really looked up to our older brother, who was a pretty successful hockey player and ended up playing junior hockey and then Division I at Mankato, Minnesota.
So That's good.
Yeah.
Let me back up a little. And it's funny. I was sort of the opposite. I learned to skate. My parents put me in skating lessons when I was like 4. And then I was like, hey, I want to play hockey. Nobody in my family ever had played. Um, so it's just funny. I actually tried basketball for a year and then went back to hockey because I was always fouling out and classic hockey player.
Yeah.
So you take us into a little bit of where it kind of becomes serious for you and going into high school, sort of what that looks like.
Yeah. Hockey didn't really become overly serious for me. Even soccer. Soccer was probably a sport I was a little bit more just naturally gifted in, but hockey did not become overly serious for me until about my sophomore year of high school. And part of that was watching my older brother play junior hockey and then Division One, and he had an incredible work ethic when it came to hockey. I think that's how he made it to the Division One level, and so it was pretty inspiring as a younger brother. You're already looking up to your older brother as it is, and so he kind of showed myself what it took to get to the next level, and it became inspiring. And for the longest time, I was actually really undersized, like just a scrawny little 5'2" kid. All the girls were bigger than me. All the other boys in high school had, armpit hair and they were shaving. And I mean, I was super intimidated, super insecure about some things. And so it was really kind of hard for me to go all in on sports because I just didn't have any confidence in my ability. But as I began to grow towards the end of high school, I was like, okay, this hockey thing is pretty cool. I mean, I could really get into this. And so started working out more, shooting more. I started seeing some results, and then got an opportunity to play junior hockey, which is the in between high school and college. And I had already come from Irondale High School, which is by no means a powerhouse in hockey. In fact, not many hockey players make it out of Irondale. So it was kind of a long shot for myself and my brothers to even play at the junior level. But for some reason, I got an opportunity to play juniors. Part of it was because I had a twin brother who was a little bit better than me at the time, and my older brother had played for this junior team. So I think I got that opportunity to play. And it was really in juniors was the first time in my life that I had really faced like significant adversity in terms of a sport. And I went to juniors, going from being one of the better players on my high school team to going to juniors to probably being the worst player on the roster. And I was getting healthy scratched. For our listeners that maybe aren't hockey people, it would, that just means you weren't good enough to be in the lineup, so you're in a suit and tie in the stands not because you're injured, just because you're not good enough to be in the lineup on Friday and Saturday. And so really difficult. I went through that quite a bit, about half the time that year. And it was really a shot to my identity. But kind of more at that time of my life, it was more of a decision-making time. It was like kind of put on your big boy pants. Like, okay, you really say you want to be a Division I hockey player and a pro hockey player? And it was like, well, you're clearly not even good enough to play at this level. So you've got to make some decisions here. And it was really then that I kind of went all in on training. And I think my parents would tell you that I became pretty obsessive about it. And, working out and training actually became a big part of my identity. And so that's kind of what took my game to kind of the next level. And the interesting thing is I did all this training and really transformed my body over the course of a summer and a season, and became, part of it was having an actual growth spurt. I would finally, got over 6 foot and, was 180 pounds and still had room to grow. But the second year of my juniors, I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm finally there. I finally got there, and I got hurt the first game of the season. And then when I came back 2 months later, I got hurt again the first game back, completely different injury. Ended up playing through that injury for about 12 games. Then my season ended on injury, and I had to have a surgery. And so that was kind of a really shock to my system. But it's actually in those moments that it really taught me how to work hard and persevere. And really, if you have a goal, and you're willing to stick with it. It's like, do you really believe in that goal or not? And so it was kind of in those moments, some of those hardest moments, that it really shaped my work ethic and perseverance and what I was going to do with my career, and kind of go all in is through not being good enough and getting hurt.
Well, there's a couple of cool things there. First, you never know who you're inspiring and who is looking at you. And I think of your brother and the way that he probably didn't know how he was impacting you. He just was training himself. But then to see the way it inspired you, and then it became your work ethic, that it wasn't your natural ability, it was the work ethic that brought you to a level of being able to play. And now you're a coach, which we'll get into that. But it's when you need to find a way through your work ethic. That's why they say the most natural players aren't always the best coaches, because you had to figure it out. Something fascinating about hockey that I'm wondering if you can speak to. A lot of guys with different sports, you graduate high school, you get that football or basketball scholarship, you go play a year and maybe go to the NBA or whatever. Hockey, I mean, you have to take this alternative route and go kind of pause your life and go to juniors. So you're a senior in high school. A lot of your friends, I'm sure, are going to college and, starting that, going in the dorms, and you go play juniors as the worst player on the team, as you say. How do you even decide that?
Yeah, I think part of it, yeah, junior hockey is really unique to the sport of hockey, and no other school or no other sport really has to do that to get into a school. So I think the part of the reason I did it is because I wanted to play college hockey. I mean, that was my goal. And at that time I started having the goal of playing professional hockey too. And so it was kind of the natural progression, right? There was no way I was going to play Division I hockey without it. It's very rare that a player goes directly from high school to go play Division I hockey nowadays. It's very rare that you don't have to play, multiple years of juniors now. It's just the nature of it. And the reality is because it's in place, a 21-year-old is in most cases significantly more physically mature than an 18-year-old. It is pretty crazy, the progression or the development you see in a young man's body during those age years. So they come to college. A junior hockey player goes to college, and he is a lot more equipped physically than he might not be, and that's why, in football, you see red shirts all the time. It's almost an automatic thing at Division I programs. You got a red shirt just because it takes time to physically mature. And so that was one of the biggest reasons I did junior hockey, is because I just needed more time to develop and see if it actually worked. The other reason is my brother had gone before me and he was inspiring to me. There was part of it too that I don't know if we want to get into too much, but I was going to Bozeman, Montana, and that was part of it too. Like I was going to maybe one of the most beautiful places in our country. It's not a small town anymore, but a smaller ski town in the middle of Montana, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. But talk about a shock to your system when you have been living with your parents your whole life, and then they help you pack up your car, a little 93 Mitsubishi. And my brother and I, we have our hockey bags and we have like 2 duffel bags of clothes, and we drive 1,000 miles by ourselves at 18 years old. Not a lot of kids are doing that. And so the maturity process and the development process, even though there's some things in junior hockey that can be dangerous, the maturity and the development process, you grow up really quick. you grew up really quick in junior hockey. So I'm incredibly grateful for my experiences in junior hockey, even though it can be a dark place too.
Well, I just think it's so cool. It's one thing to say you have a dream and to have a goal, but when you're 18 and you go all in, you know, your friends are going to college, living in dorms, starting their majors, and you have to really be committed. So I love that. And I always tell people like, it's, I mean, you can talk all you want about your goal and your dream, but are you taking a significant step and a risk? Um, that's what it really means to believe in yourself, to actually go out and do it. So I love that. Take us kind of the transition. How do you get from juniors into your D1 program?
Yeah. Well, kind of what I alluded to, I wasn't necessarily the best player in juniors. And I wasn't exaggerating either when I was probably the worst player on the roster. And if you just look at the games played, that was probably it. And so over the course of 3 years playing junior hockey, a lot had to take place. One, I just grew naturally. My brother and I, my twin brother and I were very late bloomers. So our senior year of high school, I think the program says like 5'8" or 5'9", about 140 pounds. And, by the end of juniors, when I was 21 years old, I was about 6'1", 190 pounds. So pretty, in about 3.5 years, a pretty significant change, which you go that size different makes a huge difference. And so that really helped. And then the other thing that really helped was my play. I developed as a player on the ice. I'm not overly confident about a lot of things, especially maybe how good of a player I was or wasn't. I've always struggled with that. But one of the things I can confidently say is going through the injuries and going through being the worst player on the team, that it taught me a level of work that I didn't know I had in me. Right. And so I can confidently say through my pro career and my college career that I gave it everything I possibly had and went all in and really sacrificed a lot of other things to get to where I wanted to go. Again, I can't be super confident about other things, but I can be confident about that. And so anyway, that's what got me to an opportunity to play at Bemidji State. Is they came and watched me. I had developed into a player they felt deserved a spot on their team. So I went to Bemidji State, and it was a really incredible 4 years, but it was not without a lot of difficulty. In fact, my first year out of 38 games, I only played 11, not because I was hurt, because I was the worst player on the team. And so I kind of went through the exact same thing I went through in juniors, my freshman year of college. And it was a huge struggle. I wanted to transfer. I wanted to quit. I have incredible parents that would have supported me if I would have left. But I think there was always part of them that were just kind of, saying, hey, you've got to stick with this. Like, it's really important that you see this through, because there was nothing toxic going on. There was nothing that was injuring my mental health. Like, I was in a good situation that I didn't need to leave. It was just hard. And my parents were always so supportive, but also like, hey, we don't, barring any circumstances that would be detrimental to your health, we don't quit. We don't, you don't give in. And so I ended up sticking with it. I wanted to quit so bad at Bemidji, and I was miserable so many times going into the weight room or going to the rink. But it was in those moments that, again, that it taught me how to maybe push even further, to become a better teammate, my influence on the team was not going to grow with on ice performance. It was going to grow with, by the way I lived my life. And so that was kind of my path to college hockey in Bemidji State. And we had some incredible success at Bemidji my junior and senior year. And it was a ton of fun. A lot of a good group of us went on to play professional hockey, and one's really successful in Germany. We have two that played in the NHL. And so it was a pretty cool, pretty neat experience at Bemidji State.
Cool kind of themes in your story of persevering. And that's just such a word for anybody, especially athletes, but really anybody that you have a goal and you're striving. Um, there's going to be some hardships. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to give up and to quit. And you had those, you wanted to take them, but you stuck with it, and look at the fruit of what happens when you do that. It's not saying, oh, everyone will be a pro hockey player, but it's more about the character that you develop within that. And the delayed gratification is something I think is so huge that I see in your story. You probably said no. If you were known for your work ethic, you probably said no to a lot of parties, a lot of video games, a lot of just normal fun things. You have to be able to stay focused and say no. Also, coach, he's a very humble guy, so he's not going to mention that you were an assistant captain and a captain and played in the Frozen Four. So what, I mean, you have to tell us a little bit what that was like. Had to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah. And you never want to come off as boasting, but I think the older I've got, the more I realize like this is part of my story. And so my hope is that's an inspiration to somebody. It's a testament. I know we're going to talk about how faith is weaved into all this, because it really is, but it's really a testament to the King of Kings and just kind of how he's shaped me and formed me in life. And so, yeah, I mean, like I said, I was probably the worst player at Bemidji State. I played 11 out of 38 games my freshman year. That's not good. And usually players get cut after that. But I realized I had to do something if I wanted to play. And so training and working out off the ice and on the ice and being the hardest work, committing to being the hardest worker on the ice, whether I was or wasn't, I'm not saying I necessarily worked harder than other guys. I just gave it everything I had, was going to be how I closed the gap, talent gap, but it was also going to be the way I was going to have influence on my team. And I think, the more guys got to know me, the more they realized that there's a guy, hopefully, that they can follow in there, because like he's not at the bar with us on Friday night. A lot of times he was shooting pucks or he was working out. And I'm not saying that's all healthy to separate yourself from the team. We can maybe talk about that too. But my influence grew because they're saying, okay, there's a guy who's in the stands every night, but yet he's given it everything he has every day. I tried not to complain. I tried not to ever bring the team down, though I will say I complained to my now wife quite a bit. I probably complained to my parents a lot, but I never wanted to infect the team with that kind of noise and that trash of complaining and woe is me kind of attitude. And I think that's probably something my parents instilled in me, and certainly my brothers held me accountable to. And so that kind of helped, my influence grew. And so as I became a better player, I had the opportunity to be the assistant captain, then the captain at Bemidji State. And we were kind of wildly successful for a small Division I hockey school, where we got to play in the Frozen Four. And actually the next year, we were probably a better team. We were the only time in Bemidji State's Division I history that we were a top 5 team in the country. And it was just an incredible 2 years, but I was fortunate enough to be the captain of those teams. And it wasn't because I was the star player at all. And I think there's some lessons in there for myself, my family, but also players I coach, and then maybe some other athletes that are listening, that you do not have to be an all conference player. You do not have to be the guy who's getting all the media attention, that you can have influence, whatever position you find yourself in, by the way you live your life. And if you're authentic and you are a team player and you work incredibly hard, then your influence will grow. Your influence will absolutely grow, and it becomes infectious in the locker room when you can do those things.
That's good. So I used to watch Miracle on Ice like every weekend. You just remind me of the quote, why'd you want to play college hockey?
Yeah, for the girls.
Just-
Duh. I had a girl,
but
she's now my wife, so I wasn't doing it for that.
yeah, yeah. Man, so good. So college ends, and how do you kind of move forward as far as ending up playing professionally? If you're finding this podcast valuable, take a second to leave a review, to follow on whatever platform you're listening on. This will help the podcast reach more people. Check us out at 1020words.com/DYA, TEN20words.com/DYA. You can check out our merchandise. We have sweatpants, hoodies, t-shirts, shorts. Use code all caps DYA20 and take 20% off. There's also a button where you can support on Patreon, follow on Instagram at Dear Young Athlete, or inquire about being on the podcast or bringing Dear Young Athlete to your team or group. We hope to see you there. Now, let's get back to the episode.
That was always a goal that was on my heart. I shared earlier that I was really insecure about my ability as a hockey player. I was confident in some of the things I was able to do off the ice in terms of fitness and work ethic. But as a hockey player, I was not very confident, and I was not a star player at Bemidji either. And so the interesting thing was I always had this on my heart to play pro hockey. I shouldn't say I always had it, but for a long time I had it on my heart to play pro hockey. And really the only people that probably knew about it were my brothers, my parents, and my now wife. I was never bold about it. I wish I would have been more bold about my goals and told people what I wanted to do. And my senior year, I sat my coach down. I was a captain at this point. I was still so nervous to talk to him about this. I said, "Hey coach, I just want to let you know, my sole focus is on this season, but after this season, I really want to play pro hockey. Like, it's on my heart to play pro hockey. I want to do everything I can." And it's funny. I wish I would have brought this up to him earlier, because he's like, "Yeah, of course, Chris. Like, we know you want to play, and he's like, "We're going to do everything we can to get you there." And so it was kind of a cool moment for me to actually just have that conversation. There's a lesson in that too. You just got to have conversations sometimes. And from that point on, I just I knew it was in the back of my mind when my year finished, I was going to play pro hockey. My twin brother played Division I at Army West Point, and he had a tremendous last 2 years of his college career. So, and he was a year ahead of me too. So I played juniors an extra year. He only played 2 years. I played 3 years. So he was a year ahead of me in college. And so when he finished his senior year, he had a ton of pro opportunities. He had an agent. And so basically about midway through my senior year, I was plugged in with my brother's agent, and he became both of our agents. And as my senior year came to a close, he started looking for opportunities, and we lost to Michigan in the quarterfinals of the NCAA tournament. And I was like, oh man, it was a real bummer. We thought we had a team to go back to the Frozen Four and maybe even win a national championship. And so it was a real disappointment, but sure enough, 3 days later, I got a call from the New York Rangers. Their minor league affiliate wanted to bring me in on a professional tryout. It wasn't really it was called a professional tryout, but they actually had signed me to a contract for the next season too. So, 3 days after our season ended, a really cool experience. I signed a contract, and the next day they got me on a plane, picked me up in Hartford, Connecticut. It was cool because I had never experienced anything like this. They got, I had a driver, and I had people grabbing my bags, and it was really first class by the Rangers and their minor league team, how they treated you. And so it was this world that it was so foreign to me. I was, again, an average player, maybe an above average player by the end of my college career. And here I am with first and second round draft picks and guys making significantly more money than I was ever going to make playing pro hockey. Hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars. And I'm in the same locker room as these guys. And I already have insecurities about my ability as a player. So you can imagine how those insecurities kind of grew when I became a professional player. But really cool. That's how I transitioned from college to professional hockey. I played 6 games right after my senior year. I was doing school kind of via email. Once our season ended in Hartford, I went back to school for another month and graduated and got married a few weeks later. And then it was off to the pro hockey adventure for the next 6 years.
And so I want you to tell anything that you want to about your pro experience. And also, if you can speak to every kid with a stick and a puck dreams of playing pro hockey.
Yeah.
You did it. So if you can speak to, was it what you thought? Was it the fulfillment that you would have thought it would have been? Was it not? What was that like? Kind of those 2 questions.
Yeah. Hopefully I can answer them well. I think in terms of being a professional hockey player, it was really fulfilling. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was awesome. It was really awesome. Again, I went from being a player who never made a select team, who barely made a junior team, barely made a college team, to now all of a sudden I'm making a decent living, a pretty good living playing professional hockey. One that I could support my wife. I could, support my wife and kids on without her working. And it was really cool. It was such a cool experience. You travel around the country, you meet people from, I wouldn't say all over the world, but a lot of Europeans, a lot of Russians, Canadians, obviously. And so you meet people from all over, Europe and Russia. And it's so cool, the relationships you build, at the American Hockey League level, which is directly below the NHL, you get treated pretty well. And, it's not to the level the NHL gets treated, but when you go on the road, you get to eat at nice places and you get to stay at pretty nice hotels. And, if the travel is long enough, we fly charter. And so there's some really cool things with it. And then you get to experience, for me, it was a big deal. For maybe the guys who were a lot better than me, it's not a big deal, but even doing NHL training camps was a huge deal. To be in the New York Rangers facility and to be able to put on their jersey, and the New Jersey Devils, to be in their facility and to get their nutrition, to get their attention and their care is something that I'm really, people probably don't always want to hear, but it was really cool. I'm so grateful and so fortunate to be able to have rubbed shoulders with those different people, the NHL coaches and the NHL training staffs and the American League guys too. Like they were so many of them were such awesome people. And then, the other cool thing about pro, now that I'm retired, we have a lot of friends. My wife and I have a lot of friends that are still playing. And, one of our friends is a goalie and for the Dallas Stars right now. We have another friend, it's not that we stay in super close contact with everybody, but we have a really close friend of ours when we were in Albany who just won a gold medal in a world championship for Finland. And he's having incredible success in Switzerland. And so these cool things. And, we had close friends in Albany that, we kind of had kids around the same time, and he played 300 NHL games, and he's such an awesome guy and a great leader. And so we have so many of those relationships and stories from pro hockey that we're just so grateful for. So it was an incredible experience. It was kind of everything that I thought it would be and more. I will say my goal was to make the NHL, and I didn't make the NHL. So that was always a bummer, but I knew I gave it everything I had with the gifts and abilities and so I gave it everything I could and came up a little bit short. But as a result, I got to play in the American Hockey League, which is a very, very good league for about 7 years. And it was cool. The other piece of that, to answer your other part of your question, as much as I loved it, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. I will say that, because every single day is basically an evaluation day. And we're talking this is not college anymore. This is people's jobs are on the line and people are trying to steal your job every day. So there's a ton of guys that would kill to be in the American Hockey League. And there's a ton of guys in the American Hockey League that would kill to be full-time players in the NHL. And so every single day, these are your brothers in the locker room, but you're competing with them every single day. And then if you have a bad practice, you start to get a little bit nervous, and you string together a couple of bad practices that bleed into a couple of bad games. You're starting to think to yourself, I might get sent down here. Like I might go to a lower level if I don't start performing, or I might start getting scratched again. And so there's that piece of it that makes as enjoyable as it is to play hockey for a living. It makes it, it can make it very difficult, and you've got to be pretty mature in your mindset if you want to be successful in that. And so that part can be really, really challenging.
Well, I love what you said about, you didn't make the NHL, but you gave it everything you had. And when you give it everything you have, you can sort of hang your hat on that. And even if you don't, I would tell someone, like, have a dream, have a goal, go all out. And then even if you don't make the exact goal you thought, if you gave it everything you had, like, you can rest with that, opposed to looking back and regretting, oh, if I would have, tried harder. So I love that. How do you end up kind of ending and getting into coaching? Why do you coach? And what does being a coach mean to you?
Yeah. Well, it means a lot to me. I absolutely love doing what I do. And I'm so fortunate to be able to work with the young men and the coaching staff that we have here at Bethel, and rub shoulders with a lot of the people in the past. So kind of how I got there is I knew I wanted to coach basically from the time I was 15 years old. My older brother was working for this guy doing hockey schools all summer. And so my first real job was he would drive me to the rink in the morning with him, and I would coach little termites. We call them, mites or mini mites or termites. They're 5 and 6 year olds learn to skate. I think termites is a great term for them. But I just kind of fell in love with coaching. Part of my love for coaching, and this is part of my story, is I had some of the best coaches in the world. I truly believe that. I had a soccer coach at Irondale High School, and he was a man of God, and he was a tremendous influence on my life. And to see how he lived and to see his care and love for us was, it was just awesome. And his wife too was an English teacher, and they just poured so much into us. It was pretty cool. I also had a high school hockey coach that he's actually the guy I worked for, and we still have a relationship to this day. Just such a great influence on me, and always encouraged me, always pushed me, always believed. He was like one of the only guys outside of my parents that probably actually believed in my ability and saw a vision for what my brothers and I were capable of down the road. And so I had that. And then I go to junior hockey, a place that can be a kind of a dark place because all you're doing is playing hockey. So you can imagine the trouble guys can get into. And I had this Christian, like the toughest Christian guy I've ever met. He was our coach. And so I got these like world-class like men in my life that are coaching. And so my passion for coaching, coupled with having incredible coaches, just led me to believe. I was like, I want to be in hockey my whole life if I can be, right? I'm not saying in 2 years, I'm not going to change course or God's going to have a different plan for me. But I'm saying at that time, and even right now, I was like, I think I am being called to be a hockey coach at this point in my life, and to hopefully lead and have an impact on young men. So I've known I wanted to coach for a long time. And I really worked at these hockey schools, individual development, skill development, really. I didn't do it as much when I was a professional player. I did minimal stuff in the summer, helping coaches, but I've been training players about 15, 16, 17 years before I even became a college coach in the summer, and kind of on the side. So I had a passion for it. then kind of circling back to me not making the NHL, it honestly is probably the reason I started coaching at 32 years old or 31 years old, whatever I was, instead of playing till I was 40. My wife and I had full intentions of playing hockey until I couldn't anymore. 38, 40 years old. I loved the training piece. It was not, I was not scared of getting into the gym. Like I just loved it. I mean, you go to the gym in the morning in the summer, then you go shoot pucks, you go skate, and then you got the rest of the day. Like that's kind of the life. That's a dream. And so I was ready. I was prepared to do that for a long time. But because I didn't make the NHL, my shelf life or like my ceiling on the financial gains I could make or what leagues I could play in kind of became like, I had played in the American Hockey League. It's probably arguably the second best league in the world, behind maybe or right there with like the Russian Super League or the Swedish League. And so it's kind of like, well, if you don't make the NHL, you can certainly go to Europe, maybe make a little bit more money, have an incredible experience, which was of big interest to us. Or if a coaching opportunity comes up, maybe it's time to just get into coaching. And so again, I wasn't intending on being done playing. I had some injury issues my last year in Army. A Division I school basically handed me a Division I job. They said, if you want it, it's your job. And again, I was not ready to be done playing, but through prayer, through guidance of other people, and through just kind of what could be next in my career, we just decided to go down this path to coach. And the funny thing is, and not a lot of people know this, but after my first year coaching at Army, I was all in. I loved it, but I wasn't ready to be done playing. And so I actually I talked to my agent and talked to some other people and was going to go back to Europe, or it wasn't going to go back to Europe, was going to try to go to Europe, or again, try to get back in the American Hockey League or East Coast Hockey League here in the States, and try to keep playing for a few more years, just because my body I felt like I still could go. And so when about 2 months, my wife and I and my twin brother knew, and even the head coach at Army knew, that I was going to try to make a comeback, and I was going to give it one more go before I really committed to coaching. And to my boss's credit at Army, he just gave good wisdom, and he didn't really say I should coach or shouldn't play or whatever. There's just little pieces of wisdom there that I think led me to just continue coaching for another year at Army, and it's led me to Bethel. So, but if I had made the NHL, even for one game, I don't know that I'd be coaching at Bethel right now, which is just crazy, because not to get into it, but there's a lot of things that can happen if you play a couple games in the NHL, or it's just the reality.
Well, and it's cool. I'm guessing you wouldn't trade where you're at now. And like you said, you might not be there had you made the NHL. And sometimes it's like, man, if everything had worked out how I planned, I wouldn't be doing this thing that I love. And a word to players, I think the way you carry yourself as a player and as a person, that's what's gonna open a door for you down the road. Whether it be coaching, whether it be your coach knows a CEO who gives you a job. I just always think, as a young person, the way you act and carry yourself is so huge for your future.
Totally agree.
So I want to transition a little bit, and you've alluded here and there, but I want to hear about your faith journey and sort of kind of where it started and where it became more real. What were some pivotal moments in your faith journey?
Yeah, I think first I do have to mention, because I don't often bring my parents into my testimony, but I have two incredible parents that were like the most supportive parents ever, and I think they had such a healthy balance of pushing us and holding us accountable, but also giving us the space and freedom to explore not being an athlete or being an athlete or whatever. There was no a piece of that, and I actually think even though, I wasn't hearing the gospel every day growing up, I think there was just some incredible modeling by my parents on what it looks like to be, men and women of that hold Christian values, that display Christian values, and it's been pretty cool for me to see how my parents' faith has grown too, over the past 10, 15 years as well. But really, to answer your question more about like when did I really start learning about the Bible and Jesus and my faith, it really did start with my high school soccer coach. And he was a man of God. His wife was our English teacher, and it was cool. I had no idea what they were doing at the time, but they would have us over for bonfires and dinner, a group of us. And the more they got to know us, they would just start like talking to us about the Bible and just like little seeds, and the love they had for each other, the love they had for us, their kids, was just like infectious. And you couldn't, I didn't know what was going on at the time. My soccer coach would always have us like, hey, why don't you come chop wood with me? We're like, why is he always having us do housework with us? But every time he'd have us do like work with them, he started talking about like real life stuff. And so it was like this, like, it was almost like us and some of the other soccer guys, we couldn't get enough. Like we just wanted to go hang out with him because he was just kind of giving us such wisdom. And, nothing will, like I said, my dad is like, I don't know many better dads out there. But like, it's just hard to talk to your parents about some things. And here we had an outlet where we could actually just, talk to a coach about something that maybe we were afraid to bring up to our dad or something like that for whatever reason. I'm sure my son will be the same way someday. So it was awesome. And then I go to junior hockey. By God's grace, I'm in a place with a Christian man as a coach, which is somewhat rare in coaching to have faithful men coaching, and they're not just about winning and treating you like a piece of meat. And he loved us and served us, and he encouraged us to go to Bible study. And it was really in juniors when through this Bible study and just learning more and more, there was something in my heart, something in me, like a longing in my soul that knew there was something more, that knew that chasing after girls and chasing after identity in hockey was not going to be enough, and it was going to come up empty every time. And so I gave my life to Christ in February of my first year of junior hockey. And I know everybody's got a different story, but for me, it was kind of one pivotal moment when I still remember sobbing in front of my teammates, surrendering to Christ. And they were probably looking at me like, what's going on? This guy's weird. The chaplain, the guy who was leading Bible study, knew what was going on. And I just remember leaving that Bible study, and you're in Montana, and I looked up and you could see a silhouette in the mountains in the background. And I saw the world completely different from that point on. And I looked up at the stars and the skies and the mountains in the shadows, and I just knew that there was a creator. I knew that there was a God in heaven that loved us and he cared for us. I knew that there was something more beyond this world, and fully believe it with my heart. And my life was changed forever. Not saying it was all good after that, but that's when I surrendered my life to Christ and my heart changed and became a new creation, and he washed me clean of my sin. And again, that doesn't mean I didn't sin. I did a lot of that. But that's kind of where my faith journey really took a 180-degree turn when God just he just stepped in. He's like, all right, now's the time. And so then through, the rest of my junior career, college career and pro career, I think my God continued to use hockey and training and influence as an avenue to shape me to the man he wants me to be. And he's still shaping me. And without Jesus in my life, I think that my hockey career would have ended sooner. I think that I would have been a significantly more selfish teammate. I think I would have never been able to persevere. And the biggest thing is that I would have got lost in the world's eyes, because and I still struggle with it, I was holding on to the world's view of success. What kind of car I drive, how many points I put up, how many win totals I have as a coach was going to be the thing that identifies me. But it was God through my whole hockey career and coaching career that has been telling me, no, your identity is in me, not in how many wins or losses you have. It's not in how much money you make or don't make. Not that those things are unimportant, but that's not where your identity lies. And so throughout my whole career, he was just shaping me. And I shared all the struggles I had with injuries and getting scratched because I wasn't a very good player. And it's funny looking back on all those, that God was actually using those really hard things to like kind of shake out of me, like, hey, you got to stop this, like this noise of trying to be the most popular guy or trying to be somebody everybody looks up to, or trying to be, it's like, no, just find your identity in me. And then it's funny how when you do that, he can use you. You become available for him to use for much better purposes than what you originally thought. So I would have been I'll say it right now, I still wanted to make the NHL. I still wish I would have made the NHL, but I don't know that I would have been a very, very good at having a lot of money early in my life, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I love, man, it's so good because you really hit the nail on the head of why this podcast exists, and the belief that God is at work in all areas of life, including sports. And growing up feeling like, well, like I either have sports or have church. But to hear people don't think, oh, juniors hockey, that's where you're going to go encounter Christ. But you did. And it's so cool. And now you're coaching. And I'm sure you get guys from all kinds of backgrounds. Bethel is a Christian school, but guys want to play hockey wherever they can. And now you get to have an influence on them that somebody else had on you, and it's through sports, and that is just a beautiful thing. Man, I love it.
Yeah, I think you hit it perfectly, or you said it perfectly there. Is at Bethel, we are a Christian school, and we are very we hope we're very clear about who we are and the type of young men we want to be and desire for these guys over the course of the 3 or 4 years here at Bethel. But the reality is oftentimes they see a nice locker room, or they see coaches they can connect with, whether it's at Bethel or somewhere else. They see that's why you make decisions on school. And a lot of players, if they're athletes, they're probably their primary reason for going to a school, even if they grew up in faithful Christian homes, is not because it's a Christian school or not, right? You can go be a Christian at any university in the world. And, I think people don't always realize that they're picking the school because of athletics, and they're picking the school because of maybe an academic program that they have. And it's not necessarily because they're a Christian school. And so with all that being said, we get a wide range of guys. We get guys that grew up in Christian homes. We get guys that, we tell them who we are, but they're like, I just want to play hockey for Bethel. I want to be a part of that. Right. And while they're here, we're going to be like, all right, man, we told you who we are. And that wasn't just a recruiting pitch. That was like, this is who we are. And we want men that are going to grow in their faith. They're going to be challenged in their faith. They're going to be challenged to answer some questions while they're at Bethel about what kind of man they are and who they want to be and what they want to believe in, right? And we have some guys that are already Christians and are just walking faithfully, and say, okay, how do you grow more and more so that you're a better husband and a better dad and a more faithful follower? And whether you're a pro hockey player, you're a leader in the corporate world, like what is it going to be? But wherever we find guys at is to say, hey man, like we love you and we love you so much. We're going to tell you about this guy named Jesus, because once you believe in him, your life will never be the same. We're not saying it's going to be easier. We're just saying your life will never be the same. And you will have a peace in your heart that you didn't know existed. And so I influence the guys probably pretty imperfectly. And I think my assistants do an incredible job. And we, so many times we get laser focused on the hockey and we forget about that. But again, over the 3 or 4 years while we have them here, we hope that something at Bethel, whether it's a professor or our AD or what happens in our strength and conditioning room, because we have maybe the best strength coach in the world, college strength coach in the world. He's an awesome man. And what happens in the halls of the athletic department when they're bumping into other coaches, that they leave here, and it just incredible, it just impacts them incredibly. And seeds are planted for them to grow in their faith. Seeds are planted where they come to faith, and just so many incredible things can happen. And we're seeing some really cool things happen within our athletic department, within Bethel hockey. And again, we do that imperfectly, and we're still growing and learning from other people, but that's what we want Bethel to be like. And it's a really unique, hockey is a little bit more unique than maybe some other sports, and some different challenges, good challenges, but just different.
Yeah, I love how your coach that you said he loved you guys and he served you. You weren't just something he could use to try and further his career. And now you have that heart, and it's not just, oh, we're trying to convert everyone to a religion. It's, we're trying to share with you something that will give you a peace and a joy and help you become a husband and a father and a loving person. It's so,
Yeah.
That's so good. And just go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would put it this way too, is I would say that we want to live lives as coaches and as hopefully mentors or leaders in their life, where they go, I don't want to be like coach. I just want to, whatever he has, I want, whatever he, I don't want the life that coach wants. I want what's in his heart, if that makes sense, right? Like, I don't want them to be me. I want them to look at me and hopefully see that I believe in something different, right? And a lot of the guys know what we believe in. They know that I'm a follower of Jesus, and that's the foundation of my life. I mean, that's really everything. But for those that don't know, is to be like, why is our coaching staff like that? Why is Chris and his wife like that? Like, and so that's really what we want. We want them to see our coaching in how we live our lives, and hopefully it's a reflection of Jesus.
So good. So good. So we could spend another hour on this topic, because there are so many lessons that we learn in sports that can influence our lives. But if you could pick one lesson that you've learned as an athlete and that you've seen impact your life, what would that be?
Oh man, do I have to pick one?
We'll even say you could do two.
I'll do two. The first one's going to be really short. One lesson that I've learned that I don't think people understand, and I have to preach this to myself all the time, is we are capable of significantly more than we actually think we are. And I think young people, including myself, sometimes have the misunderstanding of like what hard work really looks like. Hard work is just like the ticket to get into the party. That's all. I mean, hard work is just like, that's what you're supposed to do, but going above and beyond, if you really want to achieve something, is really what's going to make the difference. And you have to do that over time. It's not like a 1 week thing or a 2-month thing. It's like, you have to do it over time. And so I think that's one of the lessons that is really big. But honestly, the biggest one is identity. Hopefully people gathered that from today, is like, what do you find your identity in? That's the biggest lesson I've found in pro hockey and college hockey, and being again, I'm really fortunate to have played Division I and to have played pro hockey. And I think we look at those things in life and say, that's what it's all about, like achieving these mountaintop things. And I just don't know what it is. I saw a lot of guys that were driving luxury cars and making boatloads of money that had an emptiness in their life.
Hmm.
And playing pro hockey is incredible. You know, if a guy is listening and he wants to be an NFL player, like, you should go for that. But if that's what you're finding your identity in, I'm just telling you, I'm not a very smart guy, but take it to the bank. That is going to fall short. It's
Yeah.
going to fall short at some point, because you're not going to be good. You're going to get cut someday. You know, Tom Brady's career is going to end someday. Believe it or not, Tom Brady supporters.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. You know, but it all comes to an end, right? At some point, we're not going to have enough money. You know, somebody's car is going to be nicer. Somebody's going to be better looking than us or stronger than us. So what are we going to find our identity in? Is it going to be of the world, or is it going to be of something else? You know, and that's the biggest lesson that I hope my players get, that I hope the people around me get. And again, I do this imperfectly. You know, I act like an idiot sometimes, but I want my life and my wife's life and my kids' life to be marked by something much more than this world.
Mm. Man, when your identity is in anything other than Christ, whether it be your sport, your business, your ministry, even, you live and die by performance. I mean, you know the feeling. You score a hat trick or something, you have a great game, you feel on top of the world. For how long? For a day or 2 days, and then you need to repeat it to feel good about yourself, and then you have a bad game and you feel worthless. And you can do that in any area of life, but when your identity is in Christ, and you mentioned it earlier, you can separate your value from your performance. You can say, man, I am loved, I am valued, I have purpose, I'm important. And then you're free to play and do your best. And if you do great, man, that's still awesome. Then when you have a bad game, you know, you can say, too bad, but I'm still valuable and loved.
Yep.
That's so good.
It's so, yeah, I mean, that's such a huge thing. And I would tell, like, all the athletes listening to, and it doesn't even have to, you don't even have to be an athlete. You could be another coach or somebody in the corporate world listening, is to say, when we truly find our identity in Christ, we will experience more success in our profession than we thought imaginable. Because we're gonna be doing these things without a 100-pound weight on our shoulders all the time. We're going to be able to be free. And it took me a while, even as a Christian, to understand who I truly was and what God was actually saying about me. And when I figured that out, when people spoke that into me, I played better than I ever played in my whole life. I played more free than I ever played. And when I had a bad game, yes, I would be disappointed and frustrated and had to figure out how I was supposed to correct this. But it also went away significantly quicker. I did not hang on to it for weeks at a time. I didn't walk around my wife, grumpy all the time, and same with a loss now. When my identity is secure in Christ and I know that and trust that, I can get over a loss probably within 24 hours, right? Doesn't really affect my family. But when I'm just like really struggling with my relationship with the Lord, or like who I really am, then I'm hanging on to those losses for half the week or a full week, or until we get a win again. And the collateral damage to my family is pretty unacceptable, right? And so that's hopefully that's the point, is like, if we can rest in our identity every single day, then we will perform way better. Our relationships will be way better as a result of those things.
Yeah, and it's okay to want to win.
Yeah.
You should want to win. You should do your best, and then be able to rest, like you mentioned earlier. You give it everything you have, you can live with the result.
For sure.
So as we come to a close, you're on the Dear Young Athlete podcast. So we need you to complete the statement, Dear Young Athlete. What do you want to say to your players and to a younger Chris?
I would say, dear young athlete, you are worth significantly more than your performance on the ice or on the field, or how many Instagram followers you have, or what kind of car you drive, or how much money you have, or how popular you are. You are significantly more valuable than those things. And those things may be important, and those things are not always bad. But if you find your identity in those things, it's going to come crashing down. And so I would say also to that young athlete is like, I hope you find your identity in Christ. But if you're not quite there yet, you have to know and believe that you have significantly more worth than what the world says is valuable. And so that's the biggest message I'd give to any young athlete, to my athletes. We speak that to our athletes all the time. I hope they know that we actually really love them, regardless if we stink on Saturday night. You know, it's disappointing, but we still love them like crazy, and we still want the best for them. So hopefully that's a really good Dear Young Athlete statement.
It's perfect.
Inspires somebody.
It's perfect. It's beautiful. Chris, thank you so much for sharing with us. So many good words and gold nuggets in there. So I know whoever hears this will be blessed, encouraged, and inspired. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, man. It was a blast. Hopefully we can do it again.
Yes. All right. Later.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dear Young Athlete podcast. Remember to follow on your platform and leave us a review. Check out our website linked in the description, 1020words.com/DYA. Use code all caps DYA20 and take 20% off the merchandise. We'll see you in the next episode.